In this video, I'll be completely tearing down my 2006 RM250 engine right here behind me. What's happening, everybody? Greg Hitchcock here, and welcome back to the channel. And we got some big things going on today as I'll be tearing down and disassembling this 2006 RM250 engine. So flipping the camera around here to give you guys a good view of this engine here. So this thing was stored outside. As you can see, it's just all nasty and gross. I had some issues taking it out of the frame. I couldn't get that swing arm pivot bolt out of there because it was just so rusted in there. And I had trouble getting the rear axle out of the bike too. So I'm hoping I don't have any issues tearing this thing down. But before I get started, a couple things. I've got this Motorsport engine stand to make my life a lot easier. It's gonna hold the engine. We're gonna have to hold it with one hand and like wrestle this thing while I'm kind of tearing it apart. And the next thing, I don't actually have a manual. So what I did is I went on eBay and found a PDF version of the manual and actually just printed it out on my own printer. So I've got the transmission, the gear shifting, Kickstarter, clutch, cylinder head, and an exhaust valve removal here. So I've got everything I need to tear apart this engine here. And if you guys have any questions about that, I have a link in my bio below to this exact manual where I got it on eBay. It was like, you can find these PDFs from like $5 to $10. So super cheap. You download it right to your computer and then you just print it out on your printer. You don't have to be spending like $40, $50, $60 on a manual, which is pretty sweet. But guys, without further ado, let's dive into this RM250 motor. Start off with this chain guard. Grab this Kickstarter off of here. It's like it may be a little rusty, so hopefully it's not. Oh yeah, like a dream. Of course, just as soon as I say the bolt comes out nice and easy, this Kickstarter is giving me a little issue here. Seems to be rocking back and forth pretty good, but maybe just like rusted on this one spot. I'm gonna try some WD-40 on here. See if that helps kind of loosen things up. Man, I'm telling you, this RM just keeps hitting me with nice surprises. Loving it. So I'm just kind of trying to tap it back and forth to see if I can break up some of that rust that may be in there. It's wiggling back and forth just a little bit, but trying to get it past that spot. This is ridiculous. This is the that's supposed to take literally 2 seconds that last 25 minutes, and you're still trying to get the thing off. Piece of shit. All right, so enough of me wrestling with this freaking Kickstarter, but basically I took some heat to it, took some PB Blaster to it. I probably should have done that a lot earlier in this process, but overall it took me 45 minutes to get this Kickstarter off. So as you guys can see, definitely super frustrating, but hey, these are the kind of things that you encounter when you pick up these beat up project bikes. But after it's over, it's a great learning experience. But back to our regularly scheduled program now. We'll continue with the rest of the engine teardown. So let's go. We're gonna start with the reed case. All right, we got the stock reeds here. I'm looking for any chips in them at all. I don't see any chips, which is good. It's a good sign. There's a better look at the inside here. I don't see any air gaps or anything like that. There is a couple like specks of gunk or dirt in there, but other than that, seem to be in good shape. Time to get the cylinder head off, grab the spark plug. All right, and then we'll loosen up these cylinder head bolts in a crisscross pattern. And I'm just breaking the tension at first, and then I'll go and completely take them off afterwards. Okay. All right, let's see what's going on under this dome. All right, so the previous owner did say it had a new top end in it, and it looks like it's kind of golden brown here on the top, a little carbon on this side here, but nothing really to be too alarmed with at all, I would say, on this head. But guys, this thing is getting replaced with a Fathead. Luke from Fathead is hooking it up with the RM250, which is actually right over here. This Fathead is gonna be on there like that. It's gonna be looking sick. So if you guys want one of these Fatheads for your bikes, use the code GREG10 in all caps, GREG1010. You'll save 10%. But guys, watch out for a giveaway with one of these heads coming up soon. Okay, next up, we got the removal of the exhaust valve cover. And then we need to go ahead and remove the exhaust valve rod bolt, which is right here, guys. Then the rod should just come off of the valve just like that, because you'll need to be able to get the cylinder head up and off. And then next up is the removal of the cylinder head nuts. I'm gonna start with the one on the back left of the engine, and we're gonna wanna move in a diagonal pattern as well with these guys. So this is the exhaust valve spacer that was supposed to be in here and it ended up just sliding out. So make sure you guys are aware of that, because I've got the engine kind of tilted this way a little bit towards the camera, and this spacer just kind of slid out. So you've got this piece here and then this piece as well that was on the outside. Just take aware of that, guys. So sometimes you gotta knock these cylinders back and forth a little bit, but it looks like this one is just ready to come off. Like I said, this guy just did the top end and really looks like it's in great shape, which I'm happy about. Let's look inside this cylinder head, and it looks freaking mint in there. The exhaust valve in there looks nice and clean. Man, I'm stoked about how good looking this cylinder is on the inside. Pumped on that. So it looks like we got a Wiseco piston on here, and this thing even looks like it's in great shape. So yeah, I mean, I guess he was right in saying that the piston, he just did the top end. The rings aren't stuck or anything like that. I think he said had about 10 hours on the bike maybe. So I mean, man, this piston is in great shape. Doesn't seem like there's any up and down playing the crank, which is sweet, but let's get this piston off, get the circlips, the pin, and then, yeah, we'll get the piston off. All right, guys, but before we go any further with the build, I had to take a little break. I'm gonna show you something super special right now that I'm pumped about. So let me flip this camera around here. Check out this sick new workbench that I get to work from. So, good buddy of mine, Nick Gepper. If you guys don't know who Nick is, he's an Olympic silver and bronze medalist slopestyle skier. He just won the gold in slopestyle X Games this year, but he built me and welded this custom steel table that I can work on. It's got caster wheels on the bottom. Went to a steel shop and bought all the parts and welded this thing together to my specs, height and everything. And then he also took the plasma cutter, and check this out. He literally plasma cut at Greg Hitchco into the table, which is super dope. So Nick, thanks a bunch for that. We're about to get this engine over onto this table. Let's go. All right, back to working on the new bench. We're going to take the C-clip off. We're gonna take the clip out of here, wrist pin, and grab this piston off. But I'm just gonna put a little rag here in the bottom end. These clips can be known to fly everywhere, so even though I am gonna be taking the bottom end apart, I just don't want it to fall down in there. All right, to pop this wrist pin out, I'm just gonna take a socket and kind of stick it in on the other side and just see if I can get a little bit more leverage to push that pin out. That worked great. And then the wrist pin bearing. So I got this thing flipped around now. I'm gonna start with the flywheel and ignition side of things. I've already had this cover off to get the clutch cable out of here, so let's use a DeWalt, make life a lot easier. So looking at this thing, it looks like it has a stealthy flywheel on it. The cover had this extra thick gasket on it because the stealthy flywheel kind of protrudes a little bit on top of the original one. I'm trying to figure out what size it is, but I can't really tell how much it is. I guess I could weigh it. All right, I'm gonna grab this bolt off. I'm gonna hold on to the crank arm, try to blast this off here. Oh boy, I really hope that is not rusted on there. That would be freaking brutal. Again, get some PB Blaster in there. Throw some heat on it. So it seems that this bolt up front may be rusted on to the crank. So I'm gonna spray it with some more PB Blaster. I'm gonna flip the motor around, work on the clutch side, then see if I can get a breaker bar on here with more leverage to get this thing loosened up. All right, while I'm on the side first, let's tackle this water pump. You guys, check this out. This is why this engine sand is so crucial, because it's got like a catch pan on the bottom. It started leaking coolant when I unbolted those bolts. Catch pan on the bottom is catching it all. So if you guys are interested, link in bio for this motorsport engine stand. And also guys, to note about this impeller, it is left-hand thread, and if you can see here, it actually notes that on the impeller itself that it's left-hand, so that's pretty sweet. Make sure you guys don't mess that up. I'm gonna hold the crank with my left hand and just impact it off. Again, I'm spinning it right to loosen it because it's a left-hand thread. And there's a little washer behind there as well. Moving on to the clutch, I'm just gonna blast these off in diagonal pattern. Okay. It smells weird. The previous owner did say the clutch is pretty worn out on this thing. I never got a chance to ride it. So when we take these clutch plates off, we'll check them out. All right, next up are the clutch spring bolts. Again, we're gonna move these a little bit at a time in just a crisscross pattern. Man, I cannot tell you how much easier it is with this DeWalt impact gun, guys. It's ridiculous. Otherwise, you'd still be here taking off those things. All right, next up is this pressure plate. Seems to be in really good condition, actually. And then also notice how there is a bearing just on the back side of this pressure plate here. And then we got this the push piece, and we'll take out that push rod in the center. There we go. All right, I just realized that I'm blocking the lights. So let me move this workbench for everybody so I can get better light. Oh yeah, let me just take the engine for a little stroll here. All right, moving on. So then we'll remove the fiber plates and the steels. All right, so looking at these steels a little bit, you can kind of see where the fibers grab these plates here, and it's a little bit different color than the like the inner parts of where the teeth are. So looks like these steels do need to replace. And as far as the fibers go, they don't seem to be in that bad a condition, but they do seem to be a little bit worn down. So probably just grab a complete new clutch for this thing. All right, so this clutch hub nut has a little lock washer on the inside of it, as you see right there. So we're just gonna pat that down with a flathead screwdriver. All right, so now that I got that lock washer flattened down, we need to get this inner clutch hub nut off. And in order to do that, you need to hold on to this basket. So I've got this Tusk clutch holder tool, guys, but basically this thing is just gonna clamp on to this inner basket so it doesn't move. So I'm just gonna hold on to this tool, and I've got the 30mm with the breaker bar, and I'm just gonna go to town on it. Oh, that was super easy. Nice. So again, these Tusk clutch holder tools, lifesaver when it comes to taking a clutch apart. So we got that nut, the lock washer, and then this inner hub. And then on the back side of this inner hub, there's this pretty thick washer that you see here. So just beware of that. And then this whole outer hub should just pop right out. So looking at this inner hub, I don't know, it looks like it's kind of like gouged out where the clutch plates are. I don't know if you can see that here, but I mean, it's definitely not smooth. I'm not positive if it's supposed to be that, or if I need to get a whole new clutch hub here, but I am definitely curious about that, guys. If anybody knows, leave a comment below for me. And then finally, there's just a bearing there. And what I just realized, guys, is that I removed the clutch without taking this outer clutch cover off. Obviously, it would be a lot easier if I had removed this cover first to get at the clutch plates. If you were just replacing the clutch, you can see here that you don't need to remove this outer cover, but it really doesn't matter. It would have been a little bit easier to get it off with this clutch cover off first, but hey, in the end, we got to the same place. All right, don't forget this spacer in here as well. Before we go any further, I pulled up the part in the manual where you can measure the thickness of the clutch plate fibers here. So the service limit is 2.77mm. So I've got my digital caliper here, and basically I'm just gonna measure the thickness of the plates. I'm gonna take one side, put the caliper on where the fiber goes, and it looks like we have a thickness of 3.15. Then on the other side, I'm gonna test the same thing and test the thickness again. So, and that looks like 3.09. So still in spec here. And then I'm gonna go through and do that with all the fibers and just make sure everything is in spec. And hey, if we can get away with this clutch, we can get away with the clutch. And then flipping it over, I got the clutch springs here as well that I'm gonna measure to make sure that the free length is still in spec. So the service limit says 49.4mm. So we're just gonna measure that real quick. So we're working at 50.34 here, so this spring is still in spec. I'm gonna go through and do that for the remainder of the springs and make sure we can still use these springs for the rebuild. Now that the clutch is off, let's go back through and take off the cover like I probably should have done in the first place. hammer, this cover should just kind of pop off. May have to bang it with dead blow. There we go. Get that gasket off. A little crusty on there. Damn. And then the water pump impeller gear should just pop right out there. Then before I do anything else, there is just a little washer that went on the back of that water pump impeller there. All right guys, I was super stoked to move on with getting these pieces of the motor out, but I remembered that I started on this side first because I needed to hold the clutch in order to see if I can blast that flywheel weight off. So I'm gonna put the clutch back on, hold the clutch, and then see if I can get on the other side and blast that flywheel off. All right, so actually what I'm gonna do is take this copper penny and I'm gonna stick it inside the gears here. So the copper penny is a softer metal than the metal on the gears. And then I'm gonna rotate the flywheel on the other side and then kind of keep it there to see if I can hold the gears in place. You could use a gear jammer. Then I'm just gonna come on the other side and try to blast this off with the breaker bar. I don't know if that worked. Nope, that did not work at all. Just crushed that penny. All right, so the one penny didn't work, but I went on a wild goose chase and found 7 pennies. So I'm actually gonna try to use 2 pennies and jam them in there and then see if I can just break it off with the breaker bar. So let's give this a shot. Kind of hard to get the 2 pennies in there. I'm gonna get this breaker bar. Ah, shit, it dropped out. I'm holding the flywheel so those pennies don't drop out. Then I got the breaker bar on here. All right, let's give this a shot. Oh yes, nice. I think that's working. That's what's up. The 2 penny trick seemed to work, and then I'm just gonna blast it off with the impact. That's it, I'm so stoked. All right, so here you go guys. This was the damage to the 2 pennies that were stuck in the primary and the clutch gear. So that's a trick to get a stubborn flywheel nut off. Use the 2 pennies to jam the gears on the other side. Then literally I've got this massive breaker bar here. Hold the flywheel and then go to town with that breaker bar. It really helps. If you have an air tool, it probably helps as well, but the battery powered DeWalt impact gun didn't have enough torque to blast the nut off, so that's why I had to go the breaker bar route and the 2 pennies. All right, so these flywheels actually screw onto the crankshaft in the reverse thread. So I'm gonna take it and then just turn this to the right to loosen it up. And that's it. And there we just have the stock flywheel. Here's the flywheel weight. It doesn't say on it how heavy it is. It has 715 in the back here, but I got my food scale from the kitchen and we're just gonna throw it on here and see how much it weighs. All right, so as you can see, so it's 11.7 ounces. So this is the 12-ounce Stealthy flywheel weight. We need to get this flywheel off now. So in order to do so, I've got this flywheel puller from Tusk. Link in bio if you guys want one of these. But basically, we're gonna reverse thread on here till it bottoms out. It's so weird tightening things left-handed, going to the left. And then we'll screw this outer piece in. This is a size 17 socket. And we'll actually tighten this down onto the flywheel puller, hold onto the crank, and the flywheel should pop itself out. Just like that. All right, next up we have the stator to remove. So it looks like it just has these 3 bolts. As I zoom in there, guys, you can see how there's a mark on the stator and a mark on the case. When you put it back on, you just want to make sure those marks are lined back up. And then don't forget about the little Woodruff key here. Mine seems to be a little bit stuck, but I'll pop that off in a second. And then this clutch actuator arm should just slide out just like that. Flipping back over to the other side of the motor, I have the power valve assembly gear here, and this should just pop right out, kind of lift up on the arm in the back, and it just kind of pushes out. And it was good that I actually put the outer clutch hub back on because it's connected to the primary gear and I can just blast this right off quick with the impact. Some of these are reverse thread, but on the RM250 it is not, so we'll just use a 14mm socket and just hold on to the clutch hub and blast it off. All right, so the impact gun doesn't want to seem to be working, so I'm gonna go back to the 2 penny method and then jam 2 pennies in the top of the gear here. And again, the metal on the pennies is softer than the metal on the gears. Grab my breaker bar and see if I can go to town. That was a fail. All right guys, so for whatever reason, I'm not getting enough drag and enough hold to impact this primary gear nut off, and it's super annoying, but I'm gonna put the clutch plates back in and the pressure plate and put everything back on and see if that creates enough resistance where I can just impact it off. Got the clutch back on and see if this thing will pop off now. All right, so I'm gonna try holding the crank and then put 2 pennies down here and see if that'll hold it just a little bit more so I'm not fighting the crank while this is impacting. Man, that does not want to come off. What the heck? All right, guys, so this is literally what I had to resort to try to get this primary gear bolt off. So I put the engine on the ground, I put 3 pennies in there to stop the gears from moving, put my knee on the engine, and then took this breaker bar, and then finally, this thing just came loose. This RM250 just keeps bringing me a bunch of presents that I'm so grateful for. But I'm learning new things, so there we go. Okay, the primary gear should now just slide right off. So we're gonna remove the exhaust valve assembly next. So we're gonna need a screwdriver to get at this. Make sure you're nice and even on the screw. There was a little blue lock. Actually, a lot of blue Loctite in there. And then that thing should just pop right out. All right, next up is the shift shaft and the shift mechanism. So you should be able to just push the shift shaft out from the other end of the motor. That should just pop right through. It also looks like there's a washer. Just inspect the shaft, make sure it's not bent or anything. And then we actually got the mechanism here. Oh man, that was on there hard, holy crap. I don't know if these things have ever been taken off before, to be honest with you. This could be the first time everything's getting taken off. So the first part here, the plate should just kind of come off. If you rotate it a little bit. And then on the inside, the mechanism, you want to try to pull this out as one piece because it's a couple intricate parts in here, and just pulling out on the whole assembly there. So you got 2 pawls on one side of my pointer here and my thumb is, and then you have a pin and a spring in there. And you can see here how it's springy like that. So there's 3 pieces. You got the pawl, the pin, and the spring. So just make sure you have all those pieces when you pull it out, but you should. All right, then here you got the shift shaft pin here. This is a size 12. You should just be able to impact that off. That wasn't even on there hard. And then you have the housing here for the shifting mechanism. And then that should just pop out like that. And then that last thing is that shift arm. And I just like to take a note how that spring is in there. So you can see how one side of the spring on the right side is up against that pin on the case. And then the other side of the spring actually hooks to the arm itself. So we'll just impact that off as well. All right, final 2 things are the idler gear here and the kickstart assembly. So you get that kickstart assembly out, you pretty much just remove the spring that's in there. That whole assembly should just pull out. Make sure you're taking note of that spring on the back side. So then you just need some snap ring pliers, remove the snap ring on this idler gear. And there is no washer on the back. Oh, there's actually a washer on the front side of the gear. And the final thing is this bolt on the Kickstarter guide here. So that should be it for everything in the bottom end. It looks like we can split these cases now. All right, first thing we're gonna do is remove all of the bolts from the engine case here. There's really no specific order, but I'm gonna try to do it in some type of crisscross order. Okay, and don't forget these 2 bolts on the inside of the case as well. So to get these cases split, I've got the Tusk crankcase splitter. Worked great for my Kawasaki KX250, so I'm gonna give it another shot here with the Suzuki. And the idea with this mechanism here is to get these arms to be as evenly spaced out on the case as possible. And then you've got the screws that you screw into the case until they pretty much bottom out. You want as much thread on that screw as possible, and you'll feel it bottom out. You don't need to go any farther than that. All right, the idea behind these nuts is to make sure they're even in height above these forks as much as possible. It makes the whole splitter assembly pop up evenly, so make sure you're getting even force as you drive it up. And then what I'm gonna do is make sure that the splitter itself is even on the crank end as well. And then I'm just gonna screw down on it. And as I screw down, it'll lift up and bottom out against the nuts. We're not going anywhere here. And then just grab your impact gun and tighten down and as this tightens down, this rod will push against the crank, and these guys will separate the case from the other. Okay, getting some motion. Don't be afraid to hit it with a dead blow there, especially on the countershaft side. There she goes, she popped up nice there. Okay, just a little bit more, we should be good. Oops. To get it off, I'm gonna loosen it up. Take the splitter off of the cases. Looks like the transmission assembly is popping up with this whole unit, which I didn't want to happen. We got the shift drum that popped out. Okay, this is interesting. Shit, where did this washer come from? Okay, since everything just wants to come out, whatever. We'll keep pulling up. Half of the countershaft came out with this side of the case. The shift drum came out with it. The whole main shaft kind of just stayed in, but all 5 gears kind of popped up a little bit, so hey, guess that's just the way it was gonna go. Okay, so the RM250, it does look like there was a gasket in the center here. So we'll kind of peel that up. On the Kawasaki, it was just liquid gasket, Yamabond. So luckily, it doesn't seem like this is really stuck to the cases too much, which is nice. I'm just gonna continue on here. So remove the shift drum. I'm gonna remove the main shaft transmission all at once. Then you have the shift pin here, shift fork, and then the 2 remaining gears of the countershaft. All right, so we got this crankshaft still in here. Gonna see if we can just bang it out from the other side with a dead blow. Maybe, sometimes that works. So that did not seem to work too well, so I'm basically just gonna grab this splitter again and then use the splitter to blast off the crank from the other end. Man, thing was in there. All right, final thing is to get all these bearings and the bearing retainers out of here. I'm gonna use the impact gun here, but guys, be super careful to not strip out these bolt heads. I also have a 2-minute tech tip on how to get all the engine bearings out of your cases. So if you haven't seen that and you need to know how to get those out, go watch that now, but let's get this done. And also, this is where I'll take pictures of the bearings here. So I'd like to note if the numbers are sticking up or facing down. So just take note of that when you guys are taking these bearings out. Switch over to the other cases. All right guys, so that's it. The RM250 motor is completely stripped down, and I am not going to lie to you, that was one big headache from the start. It all started from trying to get this stupid Kickstarter off. That took me an hour, and then I felt like things just snowballed from there. And man, it was not easy, but here we are. I got everything bagged up. I've got all the bearings that are out of here, but these cases are just freaking hammered. So I'm literally gonna take the pressure washer to them and clean them all up and get them looking brand new again. But this motor needed some serious work. I don't think it had ever been split before. We got the cylinder head right here, and the power valve assembly will be a separate video for that. But yeah guys, that is the complete teardown of the RM250 motor. If you guys have any questions on it, leave a comment below for me, and I'm gonna link every single tool that I used today in the description below. But that is it for me in the garage tonight. I am mentally just shot from this RM250 motor just beating me up while I was tearing it down. So I'm gonna get everything cleaned up, organize this garage, and then start on the CR250 motor tomorrow. So stay tuned for more RM250 content. Punch that like button, subscribe to the channel, because you're not gonna wanna miss a thing with these rebuilds, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.